Dear listeners, we're back with a new story. Get ready for cheating, revenge, and wild relationship drama. The day she bought the red dress, I remember how excited she was. We were shopping for our anniversary dinner, and she'd been flipping through the racks, her eyes scanning for something special. Then, she found it, a sleek, elegant dress that seemed to glow under the store's lights. She turned to me, holding it up against her body, her eyes full of anticipation. "What do you think?" she had asked, her voice full of that playful spark I loved. "It's perfect," I had said, without hesitation. And it was. On our anniversary night, she wore it with such confidence, I felt like the luckiest man in the world. That night, I couldn't take my eyes off her, and I could tell from the way she looked at me that she felt the same. But that was years ago. Lately, that dress had taken on a different meaning. Now, when she put it on, it wasn't for me. It was for her nights out, the ones where she came home late, claiming she had been with friends. I had tried to ignore it at first. Tried to remind myself that it was just a dress, a piece of fabric. But as the weeks passed, the sight of it filled me with a bitter taste. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed, watching her in the mirror as she slipped into the red dress once again. She was humming softly, applying her lipstick, the same shade she always used for her nights out. "You're going out again?" I asked, my voice laced with the frustration I'd been trying to suppress for weeks. "Yeah, just for a couple of drinks," she replied casually, not even turning to look at me. "The girls are meeting up at that new place downtown." I watched her carefully, searching for something in her tone, her expression. But she was composed, like she had been rehearsing this. It wasn't the first time I'd heard this excuse, and I couldn't help but feel that it wouldn't be the last. "That dress," I said, my voice quieter now. "You seem to wear it every time you go out these days." She finally looked at me in the mirror, her brow furrowing slightly. "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked, sounding more defensive than curious. "Nothing," I muttered, shrugging. "Just, you never wear it when we go out anymore." She sighed, turning around to face me fully, hands resting on her hips. "What are you trying to say, really?" Her voice had that edge to it, the one she used when she felt I was pushing too hard. I didn't know how to answer without sounding paranoid. But the truth was, I was starting to feel like the red dress wasn't just a dress anymore, it was a symbol of the distance growing between us. "I just don't get why you're always out so late," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "You used to come home earlier, or at least tell me where you're going. Lately, it feels like you're hiding something." She shook her head, her eyes narrowing. "I'm not hiding anything. It's just a night out with friends." "You're overthinking this." "Am I?" I asked, standing up now, the tension rising in my chest. "It's not just the dress. It's everything, the late nights, the last-minute plans, the fact that I never seem to know where you're going or who you're with." Her expression softened for a moment, like she was considering my words. But then, she waved it off. "You need to trust me," she said, turning back to the mirror to fix her hair. "You're making this a bigger deal than it is." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust that everything was fine, that she was just going through a phase, or that I was reading too much into things. But the doubts had already taken root, and I couldn't shake them. That red dress, it was more than just fabric now. It was a wall between us. As she grabbed her purse and headed for the door, she paused and looked at me. "Don't wait up, okay? I'll probably be late again." There was something in her voice, something dismissive, like she already knew I wouldn't follow through on my frustrations. And that made it worse. "Yeah," I muttered, barely loud enough for her to hear. "I figured." The door closed softly behind her, and the house fell silent. I sat back down on the bed, staring at the empty space where she'd stood just moments before. The hum of her departure still lingered in the air, leaving me feeling like I'd been abandoned in some deeper way. I didn't know it then, but that would be the last time I let her leave without a fight. The drive to the restaurant felt like a blur. My heart raced as I navigated the familiar streets, but my mind was consumed by the image of her slipping out of the house in that red dress. How many times had she worn it without me knowing what it truly meant? The soft glow of the streetlights blurred past as I followed her car, keeping a safe distance. The thought of confrontation fueled my determination, but so did the fear of what I might discover. As I parked down the street from the restaurant, I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The world felt surreal, like I was stepping into someone else's life, a life I didn't recognize. I watched her walk into the restaurant, her silhouette framed by the warm light spilling from the entrance. It was too late to turn back now. I had come too far. I stepped out of my car and approached the entrance, trying to keep my movements casual, my expression neutral. Inside, the restaurant was dimly lit, filled with soft chatter and clinking glasses. I scanned the room until my gaze landed on her. She was sitting in a booth, her hair cascading over her shoulders, laughing lightly at something the man across from her had said. As I made my way closer, I felt my heart drop into my stomach. It was him, Greg. I'd only seen his picture once, but I recognized him instantly. He was leaning in, a hand resting on the table just inches from hers, the intimacy between them palpable. I forced myself to stay hidden behind a pillar, the weight of my anger mixing with an overwhelming sense of betrayal. "Are you sure you're okay with this?" Greg's voice drifted toward me, smooth and confident. "I don't want to push you into anything." "Of course," she replied, but there was a slight hesitation in her tone. It feels nice to be out, you know. I've been so stressed lately." "Stress is good for one thing," Greg replied, a sly grin spreading across his face. "It makes the fun even better." I couldn't bear to listen anymore. Each word felt like a knife digging deeper into my heart, confirming my worst fears. I clenched my fists, feeling the rage build within me. I had to confront her, to make her face the reality of what she was doing. But I couldn't walk over there, not yet. I needed to gather my thoughts, to plan my approach. After a few more minutes, I saw her lean back, her laughter echoing in the air, so carefree. I couldn't stand it any longer. I pulled out my phone, hesitating only a moment before snapping a photo of them together, her joy contrasting sharply with my own heartbreak. I knew I would need proof, something to show her that I wasn't imagining this. Then, as if sensing my presence, Jenna turned slightly, her gaze sweeping the room. My heart raced, and I ducked behind the pillar, adrenaline pumping through my veins. I couldn't let her see me yet. Not like this. Suddenly, Greg leaned in closer, his voice lowered. "You should come away with me for the weekend. Just a little getaway. No stress, just us." Jenna hesitated, biting her lip. "I don't know, what about my husband?" His chuckle was low and mocking. "What he doesn't know won't hurt him. Besides, are you really happy with him?" That question hung in the air like a cloud, and I could almost feel her retreating further into herself. I wanted to scream, to confront him right then and there. How dare he manipulate her like that? But I knew I had to remain calm, to gather all the information I could. "Yeah, but," she started, her voice faltering. I stepped back, taking a moment to collect myself. My heart was pounding, and my mind raced with conflicting emotions. I had loved her, believed in her, and now she was sitting there, laughing with another man while our marriage hung in the balance. I pulled out my phone again, snapping a couple more pictures, each click feeling like a small victory in this war of trust. After a while, the two of them stood up, and I followed at a distance, my pulse quickening with every step. They walked outside, and I found a spot behind a parked car, praying they wouldn't notice me. As they reached her car, Jenna turned to Greg, a shy smile on her face. "I guess I'll see you soon, then." "Count on it," he replied, leaning in to kiss her cheek, lingering just a moment longer than necessary. I felt bile rise in my throat. This was no innocent friendship. "Jenna!" I called out, the name escaping my lips before I could think better of it. She turned, eyes wide with surprise and fear. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was shaky, caught off guard. Just following up on your little night out, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. I stepped forward, forcing myself to remain calm as I confronted her, knowing that my anger had reached a boiling point. Alex, wait, she started, but I interrupted, unable to hold back the flood of emotions any longer. Is this why you've been coming home late? Is this who you've been with? I demanded, pointing at Greg, who was now standing awkwardly by the car, a smug smile wiped off his face. I can explain, she stammered, glancing between us, but I could see the panic rising in her eyes. There's nothing to explain, I shot back, my voice rising. You've been lying to me, Jenna. While I've been here waiting for you, you've been off with him. How long has this been going on? Alex, please, she pleaded, but I wasn't ready to listen. I had come to uncover the truth, and now I had it right in front of me. I want answers, I said, stepping closer. The shock of betrayal ignited a fire within me that I knew would only burn brighter. And I'm going to get them, one way or another. Her expression shifted, the facade of confidence crumbling as the weight of the situation sunk in. In that moment, I realized we were standing on the precipice of something irreversible, and I wasn't sure either of us would survive the fall. The days that followed my confrontation with Jenna felt like a waking nightmare. I replayed that night over and over in my mind, the image of her laughing with Greg haunting me. Each time I closed my eyes, I could see the intimacy between them, the way she leaned into him, the way she smiled. I had to uncover the truth, but I didn't want to do it alone. I needed help, someone I could trust to dig deeper into the web of lies surrounding us. I called Steve early the next morning, my voice a mixture of anger and desperation. Can you meet me? I asked, trying to keep my composure. I need your help. Sure, where? He replied, his tone instantly serious. Let's meet at that cafe by the park. As I arrived, I found Steve already sitting at a corner table, his expression somber. He could see the turmoil in my eyes before I even spoke. Hey, man, he said, gesturing for me to sit. What's going on? I took a deep breath, my hands trembling slightly as I laid it all out. I caught Jenna with Greg. They've been seeing each other for months, and I need to know everything I can about him, what he's been doing, what kind of hold he has over her. Steve leaned back, a concerned look on his face. Are you sure? I mean, this is serious stuff. Of course, I'm sure. I snapped, frustration boiling to the surface. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't. I need you to dig into his background, find out who he is and what he's after. There's something about him I just can't shake. Okay, Steve said, raising his hands in surrender. I'll help. I'll start with some basic research and see what I can find. We spent the next hour discussing what I already knew about Greg, his name, the restaurant where I saw them, and the fact that he worked in the same industry as Jenna. It's like he knew exactly what to say to draw her in, I muttered, frustration evident in my voice. I need to figure out if he's a threat or just some guy who got lucky. Just be careful, Steve warned, his brow furrowed. This could get messy. You might want to think about how you want to handle Jenna once you have the proof. I nodded but didn't want to consider that yet. I just want the truth. The next few days passed in a blur of anxiety and anticipation. I kept replaying the confrontation in my mind, each time feeling the weight of betrayal settle heavier on my chest. Jenna continued her routine, still going out with her friends, oblivious to the storm brewing around her. I felt like I was living in a shadow, watching from the outside while she pretended everything was fine. Finally, Steve called me late one afternoon, his voice tense and urgent. Alex, I found some stuff on Greg. You need to meet me. I met him at the cafe again, my heart racing as I slid into the booth across from him. What did you find? He pushed a folder across the table, and I opened it to see a mix of printouts and notes. Greg's not just some random guy. He's got a reputation, multiple complaints against him for manipulation and cheating in relationships. He's known for charming women and then ghosting them once he gets what he wants. I felt my blood run cold. How do you know this? Did you talk to people? I did a little digging online, Steve replied, his brow furrowed with concern. It wasn't hard to find some women who've had similar experiences. He's like a wolf in sheep's clothing. Jenna isn't the first, and if you don't act fast, she won't be the last. My heart raced as I flipped through the documents. So, he's a predator, I said, my voice barely a whisper. This is worse than I thought. I can't just sit back and watch him ruin her. Exactly, Steve said, leaning closer. We need to confront her with this. But you have to be strategic. Don't let your emotions take over. Show her the evidence, and let her see the real Greg. I nodded, the plan forming in my mind. I'll set up a time to talk to her. I want her to see this for herself. She needs to understand who he really is. Steve placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Just remember, Alex, you can't control what she decides. Be ready for any outcome. That night, I waited for Jenna to come home, my stomach churning with anticipation. As the door opened and she stepped inside, I felt a wave of determination wash over me. Hey, I need to talk to you, I said, my voice steady despite the nerves fluttering inside me. She looked up, surprise etched on her face. What's wrong? Sit down, I instructed, gesturing to the couch. Her brows furrowed, but she complied, taking a seat and crossing her arms defensively. What's this about? I took a deep breath, pulling the folder from my side and placing it on the coffee table between us. It's about Greg. I know about your relationship with him. Her expression shifted from confusion to something more guarded. Alex, I can explain. No, I cut her off, my voice firm. You don't need to explain. I've got the proof right here. I opened the folder, pulling out the printouts and the testimonies of other women he had manipulated. This isn't just a fling, Jenna. This guy has a pattern. He's dangerous. She reached for the documents, her eyes widening as she scanned the pages. I didn't know. Exactly. I interjected, my voice rising. You didn't know. And that's the problem. You need to understand who you're getting involved with. As she read through the papers, I could see the color draining from her face. I thought he was different, she stammered, her voice trembling. Different? Jenna, he's been using you. I felt a rush of anger mixed with concern. You can't let him control you like this. Look at what he's done to other women. Tears filled her eyes as she dropped the documents onto the table. I didn't want to believe it. I thought he cared about me. He doesn't care, I said, my heart breaking for her. He's playing you, just like he's played others. You need to get out before it's too late. She looked up at me, her expression a mix of shock and realization. What do I do? First, you need to distance yourself from him, I replied, my voice softening. And then we need to figure out how to move forward. Together. But you have to be willing to fight for this. Jenna nodded slowly, the weight of her choices settling heavily on her shoulders. In that moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the beginning of something new, if she could break free from the shadows of her past. But deep down, I knew that the path ahead would be filled with challenges, and the battle was far from over. The following weeks were a whirlwind of emotions, filled with painful revelations and tentative steps toward rebuilding trust. Jenna had pulled back from Greg, but the remnants of their connection lingered like a ghost in our home. Each conversation was tinged with an undercurrent of tension, and every glance exchanged felt loaded with unspoken words. We were both walking a tightrope, balancing between what was and what could be. I had taken to spending more time with Jenna, trying to rebuild the bond we once had, but the weight of betrayal loomed over us. The quiet dinners that once brimmed with laughter were now filled with awkward silences, each of us grappling with our own thoughts. One evening, I set up a dinner at home, hoping to create a sense of normalcy. As I plated the food, Jenna walked into the kitchen, her expression distant. Hey, I said, trying to keep my tone light. I made your favorite. She offered a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Thanks, Alex. It smells great. As we sat down to eat, I watched her closely. How are you feeling about everything? I asked, trying to navigate the murky waters between us. I don't know, she admitted, pushing her food around on her plate. I thought I could just forget about him, but it's harder than I expected. Have you talked to him? I probed, keeping my voice steady despite the anxiety creeping in. No, she said quickly, her eyes widening. I haven't. I know I shouldn't, but I just keep thinking about how he made me feel. It's confusing. I echoed, feeling a pang of frustration. Jenna, he was using you. He's not the man you thought he was. I know, she said softly, tears brimming in her eyes. I just wish I could take back those moments. I feel so stupid for falling for his lies. You're not stupid, I reassured her, my heart aching for the pain she felt. You were looking for connection, and he preyed on that. But we can get through this, together. As I reached out to take her hand, the weight of our shared struggles hung between us. The path to healing was fraught with obstacles, but I was determined to navigate it alongside her. The days turned into weeks, and just when I thought we were making progress, a message from Steve sent everything spiraling back into chaos. Alex, you need to come over. I've got something important to show you. I arrived at Steve's place, my heart racing as he gestured for me to sit down. He handed me his laptop, pulling up a series of social media profiles. Look at this. I scanned the screen, my pulse quickening as I saw photos of Jenna and Greg together, many taken during the time she claimed she was distancing herself. What the hell? I exclaimed, feeling the anger bubbling to the surface. How did you find these? I was looking into Greg's social media, and I stumbled upon these, he explained, his expression serious. He's been posting about their friendship for weeks, and I think he's been manipulating her all along. Look at the captions. I read through the posts, each one a reminder of her betrayal. This isn't just a fling. He's been making her look like a fool, and she's been too blind to see it. Exactly, Steve said, leaning closer. We need to confront her again. She has to know the truth. This is beyond just casual dating, he's trying to trap her in his web. Trap her? I echoed, my stomach turning at the thought. What does he want with her? I don't know, but whatever it is, it can't be good. You have to show her these. That evening, I waited for Jenna to come home, a storm brewing inside me. When she finally walked through the door, I was ready. Jenna, we need to talk, I said, my voice firm. She looked up, confusion mingling with concern. What's wrong now? Sit down, I instructed, pointing to the couch. Alex, please, I interrupted, trying to keep my tone calm. Just sit. As she settled down, I opened my laptop, pulling up the posts that Steve had shown me. I found something you need to see. Her brows furrowed as she leaned closer, her expression shifting to one of dread as the images of her and Greg filled the screen. What is this? They're from his social media, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. He's been posting about your friendship all along. Look at how he's portraying you. She stared at the screen, her face paling as she scrolled through the photos. I didn't know he was doing this. I thought we were just hanging out. I replied, incredulous. Look at these captions, Jenna. He's flaunting you as if you're some trophy. This isn't innocent. I didn't think it was like that, she whispered, her voice shaking as she began to grasp the reality of the situation. Then what was it? I pressed, feeling the anger seep through the cracks of my controlled exterior. You thought he genuinely cared? I don't know, she snapped, tears spilling down her cheeks. I thought maybe he did, but I see now. I was so caught up in the attention, I didn't think about what he was doing. Jenna, I said gently, he's been manipulating you from the start. This is what predators do, they charm you, make you feel special, and then they use you for their own gain. You have to see this for what it is. I thought I could trust him, she said, her voice breaking. I was so lonely, Alex. I wanted to feel wanted again, and he made me feel that way. And in the process, he dragged you through the mud, I replied, my heart aching for her. You deserve so much better than this. You have to break free from him completely. I know, she said, wiping her tears away with shaking hands. But it's hard. I don't want to be alone again. You're not alone, I said, my voice softening. I'm here, and I want to help you. But you have to make the choice to cut him out of your life for good. As we sat in silence, the weight of the truth settled between us. The road ahead would be challenging, but I could see a flicker of determination in her eyes. We were caught in a web of deceit, but together, we could find a way to break free. Okay, she said finally, her voice steadier now. I'll do it. I'll end it with Greg. I don't want to live like this anymore. A wave of relief washed over me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. Together, we could navigate the fallout of her choices, but we had to face the difficult truths head-on. The web of deceit had ensnared us both, but we were determined to emerge stronger, one step at a time.